Right now, before we talk about numbers or politics, I want you to think about your life. Your kitchen table, your rent notice, your grocery receipt, the rising cost of gas, the medication bottle sitting on the counter. This is not just another news update. This is about your family and your wallet, and whether relief is finally coming or slipping further away. Across America, millions of people are waking up with the same quiet fear. How much longer can I keep doing this? Seniors on Social Security, people living with disabilities, parents juggling bills and groceries, workers who did everything right, paid into the system for decades, and now feel like the system is falling behind them. And now, suddenly, 3 words are everywhere again. $2,000 stimulus check. Not a rumor, not a random social media post, a real update tied directly to Social Security. And it's sparking hope, confusion, excitement, and questions all at once. Some people believe checks are already being prepared. Others are hearing it's only for certain groups. And many Americans are wondering the same thing you might be asking right now. Is this real? And does it include me? Because if a $2,000 payment landed in your account, it wouldn't be extra money. It would be breathing room. It would mean catching up. It would mean groceries without anxiety. It would mean one less sleepless night. But here's the truth. This update is more complicated than the headlines make it sound. And what happens next depends on decisions being made right now, behind closed doors. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what this $2,000 stimulus talk really means, who it could help, and why the next few weeks matter more than most people realize. Why the $2,000 stimulus conversation is back. To understand why this conversation has returned, we have to talk about reality, not politics, not opinions, but the daily math of living in America right now. Social Security was never designed for this economy. When the program was created, housing was affordable, groceries were reasonable, and medical costs didn't explode overnight. Today, everything costs more, and benefits simply haven't kept up. For millions of Americans, Social Security isn't a supplement. It's the entire income. And even with annual adjustments, the increase often disappears before it ever helps. Rent goes up, insurance goes up, utilities go up, food prices spike, and suddenly, that increase feels invisible. That's why lawmakers are once again facing intense pressure. Calls, letters, town halls. Americans are demanding action, not long-term promises, immediate relief. The $2,000 stimulus concept didn't come out of nowhere. It's rooted in the same argument that drove past emergency payments. When people fall behind all at once, the system must step in all at once. Supporters argue this isn't a handout, it's a catch-up, a way to stabilize households that are drowning under inflation they didn't cause and can't control. But here's where suspense kicks in. Not everyone in Washington agrees. Some say it's necessary, others say it's too expensive, and that tug of war is happening while real families wait. This isn't just about money, it's about dignity, about whether the country protects those who built it, worked for it, and paid into it their entire lives. And that's why this update matters now more than ever. Who could qualify if a $2,000 check moves forward? This is the question sitting in everyone's mind. Would I actually get this? Here's what's being discussed, and why nothing should be ignored. The focus of the $2,000 stimulus conversation is heavily centered on Social Security recipients, including retirees, people receiving disability benefits, and survivors. These are the groups most affected by inflation because their income is fixed while expenses are not. Lawmakers are looking closely at income thresholds. That means eligibility could be based on how much you receive each month, whether Social Security is your primary income, and whether you fall below certain financial limits. Some proposals suggest broad eligibility, meaning most recipients would qualify. Others suggest targeting only those considered most vulnerable. And that difference is massive. If eligibility is wide, this becomes one of the most impactful relief moves in years. If it's narrow, many families could be left out, again. Another key detail, automatic delivery. Past stimulus checks were often sent automatically using existing records. That means if something passes, many people wouldn't need to apply at all. But, and this is critical, timing and structure matter. One-time payments hit differently than recurring support. A $2,000 check can stabilize a household, but it doesn't solve long-term gaps. This is why the debate is so intense, because once decisions are finalized, they shape real lives, not headlines. And right now, nothing is locked in. But momentum is building. Why this update feels different from before. If you've been through past stimulus cycles, you might feel cautious. And honestly, that makes sense. But this moment feels different, and here's why. Previous stimulus efforts were driven by sudden emergencies. This time, the crisis is persistent. Inflation didn't spike and disappear. It stayed. And Social Security recipients have been absorbing the impact month after month with no escape. Lawmakers are now facing data that's impossible to ignore. Increased debt among seniors, higher food insecurity, and growing reliance on credit just to survive. This isn't theoretical anymore. It's measurable. And when numbers start telling human stories, pressure rises. Another difference? Public awareness. Social media, independent news creators, and everyday Americans are amplifying these conversations nonstop. Silence is no longer an option. That's why this update isn't fading away. It's getting louder. And when conversations don't die, they either turn into action or into breaking trust. The political clock and why time is critical. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Timing is everything. Decisions about stimulus don't happen in a vacuum. They collide with deadlines, budgets, and political calendars. And that's where urgency comes in. Right now, discussions are happening during a narrow window where action is still possible. Once that window closes, momentum can disappear fast. That's why advocates are pushing hard now, because waiting means another year of maybe. And for families already stretched thin, waiting isn't neutral, it's damaging. If something moves forward, it likely happens quickly. If it stalls, silence could follow. That's why staying informed matters, because when things change, they change fast. What this could mean for your daily life. Imagine this for a moment. A $2,000 deposit appears in your account, not as a fantasy, but as reality. You catch up on rent, you refill prescriptions without rationing, you fix something that's been broken for months, you buy groceries without calculating every item. This isn't luxury, it's stability. That's why people care so deeply, because the impact isn't abstract, it's immediate. For many families, that money would ripple outward. Less stress, better health, fewer emergencies, and when millions experience that at once, the economy feels it too. The risks. If nothing happens now, let's talk about the other side. If no action happens, the strain doesn't pause. It compounds. Bills don't wait. Prices don't reverse overnight. And people don't magically adapt to shrinking buying power. Ignoring this moment could mean deeper hardship down the line and even higher costs later. That's why this update matters, because inaction has consequences too. What you should be watching right now. You don't need to memorize policy language. You just need to watch a few key signals. Listen for words like relief, support, and targeted assistance. Watch for timelines. Pay attention to whether Social Security is mentioned directly. And most importantly, don't assume silence means no. Sometimes the biggest updates arrive quietly and suddenly. Why staying informed protects your future information is power, especially when money is involved. Those who know what's coming can prepare. Those who don't often hear too late. That's why following updates matters, because your financial future shouldn't depend on luck. Why this moment feels personal for so many Americans. There's a reason this $2,000 stimulus update is hitting differently than past news. It's not just because prices are high, it's because people feel forgotten. If you're on Social Security, you've likely heard the same promises year after year. Adjustments, reviews, future reforms. But your bills don't live in the future. They arrive now. And that gap between words and reality is where frustration lives. Many Americans watching this right now aren't asking for luxury. They're asking for fairness. You paid in. You followed the rules. You planned your retirement based on numbers that no longer match reality. That's why this update feels personal, because when people talk about a $2,000 check, what they're really talking about is recognition. Recognition that inflation hit harder than expected. Recognition that fixed incomes can't stretch forever. Recognition that survival shouldn't feel like a monthly test. This is why emails, calls, and public pressure keep rising. People aren't being dramatic, they're being honest. And honesty is powerful. When enough people speak at once, the system has to listen. That's the energy behind this moment. And it's why ignoring it is becoming harder by the day. What happens if a decision comes suddenly? Here's something many people don't realize. If a stimulus decision moves forward, it may not come with weeks of warning. In the past, once agreements were finalized, things moved fast. Announcements dropped suddenly. Details followed quickly. Payments rolled out before many people even processed the news. That's why staying alert matters. If you wait until everyone's talking about it, you're already behind. Information spreads unevenly, and those paying attention early always have an advantage. This is especially important for Social Security recipients because eligibility, timing, and delivery methods can depend on records already on file. Being informed helps you spot errors, delays, or misinformation before they cost you time or money. This isn't about panic. It's about preparedness, because when help comes, you want it to land smoothly, not get stuck in confusion. The emotional weight of one-time relief. Let's be honest for a moment. A $2,000 check won't fix everything, and many people know that. But here's what it can do. Interrupt the spiral. When you're constantly behind, every problem multiplies. One missed payment leads to fees. One delayed prescription leads to bigger health costs. One skipped repair leads to bigger damage. A one-time payment can stop that chain reaction. It gives people space to reset, emotionally and financially, and sometimes that reset is the difference between coping and collapsing. That's why people care so deeply, because even temporary relief can create lasting impact. And policymakers know this. That's why the debate isn't just about money, it's about consequences. Why this conversation is not going away. Even if no announcement comes tomorrow, this issue doesn't disappear. Inflation isn't gone. Housing costs aren't dropping overnight. Medical expenses aren't shrinking. And Social Security recipients aren't suddenly getting richer. That means pressure continues. This topic will return again and again until something changes. And each time it returns, it comes back louder. That's how real change happens. Not in one headline, but through persistence. And right now, that persistence is building. Why following future updates matters. Let me leave you with this. The people who stay informed don't just react, they protect themselves. They know what's coming, they know what to expect, and they don't get blindsided. Whether this $2,000 stimulus becomes reality sooner or later, one thing is clear. Your financial future depends on staying connected to accurate, timely updates. This isn't about hype, it's about readiness. Because when changes happen, and they always do, the people paying attention are the ones who benefit first. Your life matters, your family matters, your financial stability matters, and staying informed could make all the difference.